Welcome to the Todd Newton Morning Show podcast, featuring weekly highlights from the most talked about show on the FM dial. Now, with the talk that will keep you talking, here's Todd Newton and Maria Todd.
If you think about it, we start tipping almost right when we wake up. We tip our coffee shop baristas, we tip Uber Eats delivery drivers, we tip our Uber and Lyft drivers, we tip people when we pick up food from takeout, we tip people when we dine in, we tip people when we get our hair cut, when we get tattoos. Tipping has become a part of life, but this article that Maria sent me from moneytalksnews.com last week has kept us talking all week. And it shows that as the generations roll on, people are tipping less than less. Baby boomers tip the most. Gen X, my group, tips just under that. Then you got the millennials tipping even less. Gen Z tipping even less than that. So when you think tipping, are we falling into that mindset from Reservoir Dogs? You know, that opening scene with Steve Buscemi and Chris Penn? You know, we're not going to tip just because society says we have to tip. Well, our guest today is Professor Mike Lynn from Cornell University. He is the foremost expert in tipping and gratuities. You've seen him on ABC's 2020, read him in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, heard him on NPR. We welcome you, Professor Lynn. Let's start with your interest. This is an interesting field to kind of jump into. What led you to a career in tipping? Or the study of, I guess I should say.
I started basically as an undergrad in college. I had to help pay my way through school. And I pretty quickly learned that the best job I could get, the one that paid the most, was waiting tables. But the fact that I held tipped jobs is what really motivated me to start studying it.
Take me back to the roots of it, I guess. What are the origins of what we now know as the tip?
Right. And so I can't give you the definitive truth. I can only tell you the theories that seem most plausible to me. Basically, people have argued that it evolved out of this medieval custom called vails, V-A-I-L-S, where noble people would give gifts to the serfs and servants who provided them with services, who worked on their properties. And when other noblemen would visit and stay at an estate for a while, and because transportation was not as easy, those visits often lasted a while. Mm-hmm. And it meant extra work for the serfs who worked at that particular place. Though it became customary for the guest to give additional vails, gifts, to the staff that made their visit pleasant. Another theory that is kind of interesting was developed by this anthropologist named George Foster. He argued basically that tipping evolved in eating and drinking establishments as a way to forestall or prevent the service worker from envying you. That we have this natural tendency to envy people who are better off than us. And that's really apparent in an eating and drinking establishment because the customers are having a good time and the staff are working. And his strongest evidence for that is that the word for tip in many different languages around the world translates to drink money or money for drink.
Listen, I'd rather just buy my server a drink, have him sit down with me for 10 minutes than give 20% of the bill back, you know. More with Professor Mike Lynn on tipping coming up. Todd Newton Morning Show with Maria Todd.
Talk as colorful as the tattoos on his skin. It's the Todd Newton Morning Show with Maria Todd.
We're joined by Professor Mike Lynn of Cornell University, Dr. Mike Lynn, I should say. He has his PhD from Ohio State. He is the foremost authority on tipping here in these United States. Tippingresearch.com is your site, Professor. And let's talk about the percentage. I don't consider myself a cheap miserly, frugal man. But let's face it, if you're at a Nobu or a Morton Steakhouse with 3 or 4 friends and that bill comes and it's $350, $400, to add another $75 or $80 on top of that, when the service is technically included in the price that you're paying for the meal, that at times can seem excessive. Where did the 15, 18, 20% rule originate?
So the short answer is I don't know. Okay. And I don't really even have a good theory as to what causes that percentage. I mean, I guess I would think 10% is just easy to calculate.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a theory about why it's increasing over time, but it's just a theory. We do know that people tip for a variety of different reasons. And some people tip in order to show off, to say, look at me, I'm a bigwig, to make sure that the server thinks of them and gives them better service than they give other customers. And in order for that to happen, I have to give bigger tip than other customers. Okay. Once enough people, and if I do that and someone else sees me and sees that I'm getting better service, they'll copy it. And if enough of those people who want to show off and get this extra service start leaving bigger tips, then service to other customers who leave average tips is going to decline because the attention of the server is a limited resource. And in order to prevent that loss of service or loss of status, the server just doesn't think as well of me anymore because I'm just an average tipper and he's got these big tippers. So to prevent that loss, I have to start upping my game too.
Yeah.
And once enough of us start doing that, now the average is here and the people who want to show off have to live bigger amounts. And it exerts this continuous upward pressure.
And isn't that interesting considering the term gratuity and what that by definition relays? So we're not doing it so much out of being grateful for the service or out of gratitude. We're doing it to show off, to puff out our chests a little bit, to pose our feathers, if you will.
Well, some people are. Others are not doing it for those reasons. They're doing it to keep from getting worse service, right? It's the few people who are showing off are creating what economists call an externality and forcing everybody else to do it just to stay at the status quo.
But not out of gratitude. I think those days are.
But not out of gratitude. If you ask people, what's the main reason you tip? Still, gratitude, to reward good service. Those are the most commonly used explanations. But I've done a lot of research where I or my students have stood outside of restaurants interviewing customers about their just completed dining experiences. And there is a relationship. The correlation is about 0.2. That means 4%.
Tippingresearch.com is his website. Professor, we pull this one off of our website. Why does it seem as if hotel maids, hotel housekeepers, I guess is another way of identifying them, receive the short end of the tipping stick? That's a great question. Is it because when we check out of a hotel, nobody's there to see how much we're leaving for them on the pillow?
I think it can help explain part of it, but some of it is that it's not top of mind. Look, I've made a career studying tipping. When I remember, I tip hotel maids, but often when I'm departing a hotel, I've got a lot of other things on my mind and it doesn't always come to mind. Lots of service, like if I'm at a restaurant, the server always brings me a bill. There's an established time. There are a lot of cues that remind me now it's time to tip. Those cues aren't present in the hotel maid service. And I suspect that there's a whole lot of other factors that influence this as well. I have studied why we tip some occupations and not others. And what I find is that we're more likely to tip low status occupations where the service worker is paid very little, where the work they do doesn't require a lot of judgment. Okay, it's fairly mundane work.
And that would be what? That would be maybe a
hotel maid. It doesn't take, or a server who's bringing you food, as opposed to a car mechanic who's paid a little bit more than these other people, but also they have some skill and are using some judgment.
Yeah.
Or your doctor or your dentist who have even higher skill levels. We don't tip them in part because it's hard to evaluate their performance, right? They have expertise.
Are there some tricks that service workers use that kind of they have a bag of go-tos that perhaps a valet car parker will have, or a server at a high-end restaurant? Is there something that, little go-tos that they throw at us that they know are probably going to amount to another $1 or $2 or $5?
So the answer to that is some of the servers do and others don't. And not just me, but a variety of psychologists have studied tactics to see whether they work. And we find things like touching the customer briefly on the arm or shoulder increases tips. Squatting down next to the table when you interact increases tips. Big open mouth smiles, calling the customer by name.
That's a big one.
Have all been shown to increase tips.
And we can read your research for ourselves. All of your papers, or at least a lot of them, are on your site, tippingresearch.com. Is that where we should go?
Well, yeah, I've got a book called Mega Tips 2, which outlines 20 of these scientifically tested ways to increase tips. And it's free on my website. So, I hope that some servers are reading it and getting it there.
Yeah, servers, bartenders, anyone in the service industry. If you don't read the professor's writings, friend, you're just leaving money on the table. Want to thank you for joining us, Professor Mike Lynn of Cornell University, America's foremost expert on tipping and gratuities. We will put his website up on ours, but in the meantime, head on over to tippingresearch.com. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you for being part of the conversation. Subscribe now so you never miss a beat. For more Todd and Maria, visit ToddNewtonMorningShow.com. The Todd Newton Morning Show podcast. Great talk that will keep you talking. Produced by the host with the most, LLC. All rights reserved.